Hello, my curious learners. I hope you all are doing well. I once again welcome you on English with Chaharsa. Today I'm here with another poem, The Solitary Reaper, composed by William Wordsworth. Friends, the same request to subscribe, like, and watch the video till the end. And please don't forget to share it with your friends who are interested in learning English language and literature. So, as usual, again, I brought this lesson for you in two parts. This is the first section in which I am going to deal with the thematic and prosodic aspects of this poem, and in the second part I will deal with the text of the poem. So now, without wasting any more time, let's come to the point, and I begin with the introduction and summary of the poem. The Solitary Reaper is by William Wordsworth, and this poem was inspired by the poet's trip to Scotland in 1803, and the trip which the poet made in the company of his sister Dorothy Wordsworth. Familiar friends, if you go in the biography of the poet, you can easily find a close association between the poet and his sister, Dorothy Wordsworth. And it was first published in 1807. The dates are important, friends, for the examination point of view. So you should keep this in your mind that it was the inspiration for this poem came in 1803, and then it was written, and the publication took place in 1807. The poem Speaker. Speaker, here you may take the poet as the speaker. Speaker tries and fails to describe the song he heard a young woman or a young girl singing as she cuts grain in a Scottish field. So, as you are observing here, the girl has been mentioned here, and the task which the girl is performing has also been mentioned here. And the speaker does not understand the song, and he cannot tell what it was about. Cannot tell, actually, this is a kind of phrase and which he used in the sense of understanding. The poet is not able to understand the theme of the song which the girl was singing, the words of the song, the subject matter of the song. Nor can he find the language to describe its beauty. He finds that the traditional poetic metaphors for a beautiful song fail him. So the poet is all in helpless state, and he is not able to describe and even to express anything about the song, what it is, what's the theme of the song, what the girl is singing. The poem thus calls implicitly, indirectly, for a new kind of poetry, one that is better able to approximate and describe the pure, unpretentious, that is simple, beauty of the reaper's song. So, this introduction actually gives a hint that the poet feels a kind of need for the creation of a new kind of genre, new kind of poetry, which could enable him to describe the song of the girl. So now this is summary. Actually, the text of the poem is divisible into four stanzas, which I will teach you later. This is the short summary of each stanza here before you. The first stanza, look at her alone in the field, the Scottish girl by herself over there. She is cutting the grain and singing to herself. Stop and listen to her. Walk on quietly. She cuts and gathers the grain and sings a sad song. Listen, the deep valley is overflowing with her music. So the first stanza is an introductory stanza in which we come to know what exactly is happening in the background of the poem. Second stanza is a kind of metaphorical stanza where the comparison takes place between the song and the song which is sung by nightingale and the cuckoo bird. Third stanza expresses the dilemma of the poet, confusion of the poet, when the poet finds himself a complete failure in understanding the exact words of the song, and so all helplessly at last the poet asks the readers or the people around him, won't anyone tell me what our song is about? So this shows the frustration of the poet, helplessness of the poet, as he is not able to understand what the girl is singing. And the fourth stanza is concluding part of this poem. She was singing about the young woman sang as though her song would never end. So this stanza highlights the quality of the song. Okay, the quality of the song. The song has a kind of fluency. It is a spontaneous song. So spontaneity has always been one of the most important qualities of poetry, and Wordsworth has always been in favor of spontaneity. The same kind of spontaneity is observed in the song of the girl. Spontaneity means where there is no breaks, constant flow, just like a river. Okay, so that's kind of song the girl is singing. So this is all about the quality of the song, and the song is so beautiful, so enchanting, and so spontaneous that the poet could feel the impression and the impact of the song even after a long, long time. Okay, so this is all about introduction and summary. So now let's move to the themes which the poet has employed in this poem. The first theme is art and communication. So the Solitary Reaper is a poem about music. You know, the poetry or the poems composed by Wordsworth are mostly musical, and mostly they deal with the different aspects of nature. So here we are going to have the same thing. Music, the song a Scottish girl sings as she cuts hay with a sickle. Sickle is an instrument to cut the crop. The poem's narrator cannot understand, that is, the poet is not able to understand what the girl is actually singing about. The girl's song sticks with him. So it has an impression, long lasting impression in the heart of the poet. Its melancholic beauty echoing in his head long after its sound has faded. So in this way the poem suggests the ability of art to transcend cultural boundaries and even language itself. So friends, this is the main theme of this poem. Ability of art to transcend, that is to cross the cultural boundaries and even language itself. So it means the poetry has the power to transcend even the cultural boundaries and even the boundaries which are created by language. Why does the poet say so? Because the poet is not able to understand what exactly the girl is singing. However, the song has a lasting impression on the mind and the heart of the poet. So it is clear that the song has the ability to transcend cultural and language boundaries. Art in the poem can communicate feeling or emotion even in the absence of concrete understanding. So, art has the power, and the art does not require even the concrete understanding on the part of the onlooker or the part of the listener, okay, or the part of the observer. So, it has that kind of power, a divine power. At the same time, the poem also communicates a bit of uncertainty about whether poetry itself can offer this connection in the way that music can. So, a kind of confusion is also there whether there is a difference between poetry and music, or whether music can make the same kind of impression as poetry does. So, such kind of thoughts and ideas keep on going in the mind of the poet. So he describes her song in elegant and slightly hyperbolic terms. Okay. So hyperbole has been used in the lines of the poem, like when the poet says that she sings as if her song could have no ending. Okay. So no ending, that is endless. He also invites readers to share in his wonder and pleasure, asking them to stop here and listen. So such kind of expressions have also been used by the poet in order to heighten the intensity and the value of the song which the girl is singing. So this is art and communication. So in this way the speaker appreciates the transcendent beauty of the record song, and transcendent actually, that is without having any boundaries or limitations, and the art to transcend all the boundaries to offer connection. He struggles to capture such beauty on the page. That is, it is very difficult for the poet to describe that kind of beauty in his poem, or to scribble, to write down the kind of emotions which are there in the song of the girl. Now the second theme comes, that is the limits of poetry. So poetry has some kind of limitations. Power of refer song, which creates a connection across linguistic and cultural boundaries. As in the previous theme, we have already learned that art has the power to transcend the boundaries which are created by language and culture. But despite this power, the speaker spends much of the poem trying and failing to find the language to describe her song. So the efforts of the poet continue to understand the language of the song of the girl, to understand the meaning of the song of the girl, but again and again he failed to do so. The poem thus stresses the distinction between the speaker and the girl, and between poetry and song. Her song and her life remains beyond what his poem can represent. So now, this is very important fact through this theme, that the poet feels himself to be incapable in delineating the life of the girl, the life of the reaper, and even in describing the song which she is singing. So that is, the description is beyond the capability of its poetry. The poem begins in the present tense. The speaker asks the readers to behold, to look. Okay, and then the fourth stanza shifts into the past tense. So that is, the time shifting also takes place during or in the course of the poem. So it begins with the present tense, but it ends in the past tense. He tries to do this formally. The first four lines of every stanza is in the modified form of ballad, a form associated with popular songs in English and Scots. Ballads were popular not only in English but in Scottish literature. The second group of four lines in each stanza switches into rhymed iambic tetrameter couplets, a high elevated form distinct from the low popular ballads. So now here these are the limitations actually. The poetry has been divided here into two sections, that is low standard poetry and high standard poetry. The ballad is considered to be low standard, and the iambic and the rhymed iambic tetrameter, pentameter, and these actually meters are considered to be high standard. So the second stanza, for instance, the speaker tries out a number of traditional metaphors for song. Okay, he compares the last to a nightingale, to cougar. He employs the high diction traditional to poetic descriptions of strange foreign beauty, invoking Arabian sands, that is Arabian deserts, and farthest Hebrides, that is islands. So these are the limitations of poetry, and the limitations and the limits of the poetry have been expressed beautifully by the poet. Now the third theme, that is perhaps most popular one if we look at the poetry of William Wordsworth, that is the nature and the poet. So the poet belongs to romantic age, and romantic age is particularly uh, assigned to nature, the description of nature. And during Romanticism is a kind of movement, artistic and intellectual, that swept across Europe at the end of the 18th century. In contrast to the Enlightenment, neoclassical age. So, Romanticism comes as a kind of reaction against Enlightenment and neoclassicism. Its emphasis on scientific reason, Romanticism drew on feelings often provoked by the solitary contemplation of nature. So now the nature is a dominant part of this poetry. Nature is in the center of the poetry of the Romantic age, and Wordsworth is considered, to be the harbinger of nature. Now, even if we look at the definition that was given by William Wordsworth, and he defined poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. Tranquility means when one is alone. In other words, poetry is a calm recollection of intense emotion, and this recollection takes place only in the association, close association of nature, and that's why Wordsworth has always uh, motivated, encouraged the people to go to the world of nature, and leave the materialistic world. Solitary Reaper is a clear example of Wordsworthian romanticism since its speaker reflects on a powerful experience of nature from a tranquil distance. Okay, so now the thing is clear that the poem is a clear reflection of the concept of poetry that was given by Wordsworth. Because here tranquility is there, okay, peace is there, distance is there. However, the poet is having the impression of the song. The poem presents two sets of action. On the one hand, the reaper cuts and winds the grain and sings a melancholy strain. Okay, so the reaper is cutting and winding the grain, that is the crop in her field, and at the same time, the reaper is singing a very sad song. On the other hand, the speaker and the reader behold and listen, and what the speaker and the reader, that is, what the poet is doing, the poet is just looking at the girl, the poet is just listening the song which the girl is singing. So there is thus an implicit distinction between, that is the difference between the reaper and the speaker in terms of their relationships with nature. Now the thing is clear. The poet is outside the world of nature and the girl is within the world of nature. Okay? So the poet is merely a spectator, merely an observer, but the girl is a participant. So this is the difference between the poet and the girl. The reaper works directly on it, that is, she is directly involved in the world of nature, while the speaker, that is the poet, observes it and nature and the girl from a distance. So she is a participant while the poet is a spectator. Keep this line in your mind that the girl is a participant while the poet or the speaker is a spectator. And now this is the book actually on naive and sentimental poetry. The romantic poet and critic Frederick Schiller. Okay, Frederick Schiller wrote this book, and in this book argues that the poets of his time have lost their intimacy with nature. That means the poets during the time of William Wordsworth actually lost the closeness, proximity with the world of nature. Okay, so the materialistic tendencies had crept into the world of the poets, and that's why they had kept themselves away from the world of nature. They observe it from a distance and long to recover their proximity to it, whereas early poets participated in it directly. The Reaper seems almost a model of this direct participation. So here, the poet, in other words, we can say that the speaker himself is a representative of the poets of the Wordsworth time. Okay, while the girl, at the same time, the girl is a representative of those poets who had the close association with the world of nature. So this kind of distinction has also been brought out by the poet in this poem. Now we move to the symbols. Symbols which have been used by the poet in the poem. Nightingale, this is a word, okay, you all are aware of this very sweet singing word. Cuckoo bird, this is also a word, but this has the intensity in the song, and I have given some mythological and all these things. You can read them, understand. Arabian Hebrides, these are the places, Arabian desert and islands. Okay, so they also represent the world of nature and the impact. So you can just read these lines and you can easily understand what these places and symbols are all about. Now, poetic devices and figurative language. Some figures of speeches, as usual, have been used by the poet, and apostrophe. Okay, apostrophe is the figure of speech where the poet addresses some unseen and unknown power. So here the first line, behold her, stop here or gently pass. Oh listen. The instances of direct address are example of apostrophe. So this one figure of speech I have just given a few lines. Otherwise, and these are the another or the other figure of speech which the poet has used, like enjambment and stop line. Surah, allusion, metaphor, alliteration, and assonance. And while I will teach you the text, then I will explain and spot these in the lines. Now, form, meter, and rhyme scheme of the solitary reaper. Form, I have just told you, is a kind of ballad, and but it's not we actually can't say that it is a perfect ballad. Okay, there are some instances of ballad here. So ballad is a traditional genre of English poetry. It's not a high literary genre like the sonnet or sestina. Ballads usually alternate between lines of iambic tetrameter and lines of iambic trimeter. This is called common meter. They are rhymed A, B, C, D. Okay. So here is a change. First stanza is in the ballad form, and then we come shift from the stanza, and then there is tetrameter and pentameter lines. So there is a constant shifting from one kind of poetry to another kind of poetry. If we talk about the meter, then alternates between two meters. One is iambic tetrameter. Tetrameter means 4 foot, okay, and trimeter 3 foot. And most of the poem is iambic tetrameter, and the meter is loose and conversational throughout. The poem contains many substitutions, especially trochee. Trochee means stressed or unstressed. That is, first syllable will be stressed and second will be unstressed. And as I told you in pentameter, iambic, what happens? In iambic, what happens? Unstressed and stressed. Okay. So these are the meters. Trochee has been used here, and iambic is also there. That is, in some of the lines we find that the syllables have been arranged in this order, that is stressed and unstressed. And in some of the lines we find the order of the syllables like unstressed and stressed. So in this way we observe that trochee and iamb, both meters, have been used by the poet. Rhyme scheme, each stanza. I told you that this is divisible into 4 stanzas, okay, and each stanza has 8 lines. The 8 line stanza may be divided in half, yielding to 4 lines similarly. In first 4 lines of each stanza, the poem employs a crisscross rhyme in which it rhymes ABCB or ABAB. In second 4 lines of the each stanza, the poem rhymes subsequent lines, they're producing DDEE, CC, DD, depending on the stanza. So that is, you just put the text before you and you can just match these rhymes which I have mentioned here. Now we look at the literary text, the background of this poem. Although I have already told you that this is uh, from William Wordsworth, and William Wordsworth belongs to the Romantic age. And Solitary Reaper was written at the height of Romanticism, a literary movement that began at the end of the 18th century and stretched into the mid 19th century. Romanticism is broad and complex. This is a movement actually, and I will make a separate video on these movements. So here I have just given a little introduction. Otherwise, in detail, I will teach you in another video about Romanticism and all the movements which have been prescribed for you in your examination. So they sought pleasure in emotions and that enlightenment had suppressed, such as horror, terror, and sublime. So it is clear the romantic or romanticism is a kind of reaction against the neoclassic ideals. Okay, so neoclassical ideals were all about form and precision, correction, but here they focus on the emotions. So romantic literature was the literature of head, that is intellect, and sorry, neoclassical literature was the literature of head, that is intellect, while the romantic literature is all about heart, that is emotions and feelings and sensibilities. So historical context, I've already told you, written in 1803 or 4, okay, and trip that was undertaken by Wordsworth in the company of his friend, sister Dorothy, his friend Dorothy, and it was published in 1807. So this is all about form, meter, rhyme scheme of the poem. So in this way, let me scroll one by one. So you can take the screenshot of these slides and it will help you to study after this class. Okay, and you study them, and this will help you in understanding the text when I will teach you. आप इनको अपनी नोटबुक पर लिख लेना और पढ़ना इनको, फिर जब हम टेक्स्ट पढ़ेंगे ना तो वहां पर ये आपकी काफी हेल्प करेगा और टेक्स्ट को समझने में इससे आपको हेल्प मिलेगी. तो आप इनके स्क्रीनशॉट ले लीजिएगा. और इनको कॉपी अपनी नोटबुक पर जरूर लिखा करिए, क्योंकि आप लिखोगे तो लिखने से काइंड ऑफ रिवीजन, एक रिवीजन होगा आपका, और आपकी लर्निंग जो है वो स्टेबल होगी. सो थैंक यू all for your patient hearing and watching. Please subscribe, like, watch till the end, and don't forget to share this with your friends who are interested in learning English language and literature. And one thing more, feel free to reach out with your preference or topic in the comment. तो आपको अगर कोई पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक, कोई पोयम, पर्टिकुलर कुछ पढ़ना है तो उसका आप अपनी प्रेफरेंस कमेंट्स के माध्यम से दे सकते हैं, एंड आई विल ट्राई टू प्रिपेयर द लेसन फॉर योर कन्वीनियंस. सो थैंक यू, टेक केयर, स्टडी हार्ड.